is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
IPMNation.com.
Let's see, you got Trump versus the Republican establishment, Trump versus Mexicans, Trump versus Muslims, Trump versus the Pope. Yes, that's correct. It is Thursday, February 18th, 2016, 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. From the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire, Matt Connarton Unleashed starts right now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's that time again, Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire, broadcasting worldwide on IPM Nation 1, one of our two IPM Nation live stations, powered by Ambit Energy. You can find out how to save more on your energy bill. Go to IPMNation.ambitrabbit.com. Learn how to sign up. And, of course, Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we also have the honor and privilege of being carried on OTR FM, the premium channel on the OM Times Radio Network. So hello to all of you as well. Very happy to have you with us tonight. Let's see. So we have a lot to get to. First, some programming notes. A big, lot of TV stuff this week, a big week for that. So, just went up, actually today, I was recently on a program called, Late Night with Lynette. And this is, we shared the link out on the, Matt Connarton Hypnotherapist page on Facebook. So you can find it there, and on, YouTube, of course, it's up and whatnot. But, please check that out. It's it's me talking about being interviewed about my other life as a hypnotherapist. That program is Lynette. Actually, she's a former New Hampshire state legislator, and she does open with a little bit of a brief political commentary to start the show. But then she interviews people who are not political, or about things that are not political. Obviously, I'm very political, but she had me on to talk about hypnosis and hypnotherapy, because for those who don't know, if you're new to the show, I'm also a hypnotherapist, and I help people to quit smoking and lose weight and conquer phobias and all kinds of things like that. So Lynette had me on to interview me about that, and I really enjoyed that a lot. So please check that out. Again, we did share that out on the Matt Connarton Hypnotherapist page on Facebook. So please like that page if you haven't done so already, as well as my various other pages. So that was great. And then, and thank you again to her. It's a quick watch, by the way. It's only a half-hour show, so it's not a big time commitment for you, but I do hope you'll check it out and kind of learn more about what I do when I'm not doing this. Also, yesterday, Wednesdays, of course, a big day at IPM Nation for television. We have Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, Ward 13 with John Hopwood, which I'm on there with John more often than not. Most weeks lately he's been having me on, and I really appreciate that. And then, of course, right after that at 2 p.m. Eastern is the television edition of this very program, Matt Connarton Unleashed. So we've got both of those up from this week up on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. If you go to IPMNation.com and click the YouTube link in the upper right corner, it'll take you to that. We kind of did what we do a lot lately is we start, we do John's show, we do Ward 13, and John and I will talk to a specific guest, and then we'll just kind of carry it over. We'll see who's willing to stick around for another hour, and then it carries over into my show. And that's been going really well. And we did that this week. So basically, with both shows combined, it's 2 hours of John Hopwood and I talking with former ambassador He was the U.S. ambassador to Belize during the Clinton administration, George Bruno. He currently works as an immigration attorney right here in Manchester, New Hampshire, where we broadcast from. And that was a very interesting conversation. So please check those out. Not right now. Wait till after the show, but I hope you'll check those out. Really, really interesting. In fact, one of the things that we discussed was, I had mentioned that, I talk about immigration a lot. It's an issue that I feel very strongly about, and how I think we need a path to citizenship and whatnot for the folks who are here, and that's part of how it needs to be fixed. But I discussed on the show that one of the things, I always tell people who are opposed to doing anything for the people who are already here, the round them up and send them home crowd, which I think is just crazy talk. But, they will often present their side by saying that, look, these people are criminals. Obviously, they're criminals. Their very first act was entering the country illegally. They committed a crime. And I will often respond by saying, well, no, it's not actually a crime. It's not. Yeah, even some Republicans will acknowledge, Governor Chris Christie, former federal prosecutor, he's on record as saying, yeah, it's not technically a crime. It's not a felony to enter the country illegally. And I've always said it's actually it's a misdemeanor. Crime I usually would associate with a felony. But Ambassador George Bruno, again, obviously he's an immigration lawyer. He's an expert on this stuff. He said, well, technically, it's not a misdemeanor either. It's a civil infraction. So, it's about as close to being a crime as driving too fast. He said it's a civil infraction. It is not a criminal act on any level. And I thought that was very interesting. So I wanted to mention that. That was just one of the highlights from our very interesting conversation. We also discussed a little bit briefly, although it wasn't the main focus, obviously, but we did briefly discuss what happened in Benghazi because the ambassador, obviously, he was the U.S. ambassador to Belize, so he was never in any danger per se. Or I assume not. I don't really know that much about Belize, but when he was ambassador during the Clinton administration, but he does have some insight into what happened to Ambassador Chris Stevens in Libya. So that was interesting too. So anyway, I encourage everybody to check that out. Next week on the television edition of Unleashed, my guest will be the returning Dr. Kevin. And of course, listeners on Ohm Times Radio in particular are very familiar with Dr. Kevin. I got to be on Dr. Kevin's show with him earlier because, he's on live Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. And his guest kind of blew him off today. So I got at about 6:15, I got a text message from Dr. Kevin saying, hey, what are you doing right now? Can you jump on with me? And fortunately, he caught me while I was in the studio. So it was easy for me to get on and do the show with him. And we talked about politics and whatnot. But Dr. Kevin he's been on my show many times. I'm on his show, usually the first Thursday of every month, but got a double dose this month. But he will be on the television edition with me next Wednesday. We might, instead of doing politics, we might do something a little different. He wants to give me a reading live on the air. And Dr. Kevin's never given me a reading, so that'll be interesting. And then time permitting, I'm going to do some live hypnosis with Dr. Kevin on the show. So it'll be a different Unleashed next Wednesday on the television edition of the show. So all kinds of great stuff going on. So the programming notes took a little longer than usual tonight, so I apologize. But I want to keep you all abreast of what's that's a great expression, isn't it? Of what's going on here at IPM Nation and in the world of Matt Connarton Unleashed, as we are live tonight on IPM Nation 1 and OTR FM. I have some audio to share with you. Trump, we'll get to the stuff with Trump and the Pope, but Trump has been making this claim that he was against the Iraq war from the beginning. And, I gave him credit for, in that last debate, really just kind of, doing what no other Republican does and just says outright, flat out the truth about the George W. Bush administration and their handling of Iraq, saying they lied. They lied us into war in Iraq. And I gave him a lot of credit for that. I thought it was a great moment, even though the crowd in South Carolina booed him mercilessly for that. I thought it was a great moment because he was telling the truth. And but they didn't want to hear it. However, I have been suspicious, as have many for a long time, about Trump's claim that he was against the Iraq war from the beginning. And part of the reason for the suspicion is that no one had been able to find any record of him really criticizing the Iraq war until 2003. There was a Rolling Stone article where he was asked about it, and he was very critical and said it was a mistake. But no one had been able to find any record of him really saying during the lead up to the war that he thought it was a bad idea, as he claims. And in fact, he may have been in favor of the war leading up to it, and he's trying to rewrite history. I'm going to play for you just a very, very brief snippet of audio. Actually, no, you know what? Here's what we'll do. We'll do this when we get back, because we're up against a break, and I don't want to run into the break. So let's take this break, and then we will come back, and I'm going to play for you some audio of Trump discussing the Iraq war, or the potential prior to the invasion, on the Howard Stern show, where he seemed to be in favor of it. And, of course, I will take your calls tonight. We have an open phone line, 617-917-4476. You can call or text at that number, 617-917-4476. Join us in the chat room, ipmnation.com/live1. Tweet at me, at Matt Connarton, or hit me up on Facebook. We'll be right back.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Buddy, Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live tonight. Let's get right back to it. The Trump stuff, which seems to dominate the conversation lately. I know. What can you do? He's the front runner for the Republican nominee. And let's do first, as promised. Okay, this is audio. And to give you a little bit of context, this is audio from September 22nd, 2002. So it's on the 1-year anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. Trump was on the Howard Stern show that morning, and I'll play. I'm going to start the clip just a little bit before the specific comment that Trump makes when asked about, do you support the war in Iraq? I want to make sure you have context, so I backed it up a little bit. But when Howard asks him, do you support the invasion of Iraq? And Trump's answer to that, and this would appear to directly contradict Trump's narrative, which people have been very suspicious of, that he was opposed to the invasion of Iraq right from the beginning. All right, let's take a listen to this.
Well, you looked out your window and you could see the whole thing go down.
I saw the whole thing, and I mean, specifically, I have two windows that are focused on the building, and, the silhouette of the building.
And he builds those buildings, so he designed them so they'd look at the World Trade Center.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Wow.
That stuff.
Yeah, it's...
And, it's a little bit like you were saying before, though, Howard. I'm not sure things are any tougher. They sound tougher, but I'm not sure they are any tougher in terms of security. And... it's also nice to know your enemies. It's lovely to know you and I have plenty of enemies. We love that, and that's fine. But you like to know who they are at least. Here, we don't know. We really don't know the enemy.
I know they're skulking around somewhere, and you just feel like you're a sitting duck.
But we have an idea who the enemy is, and a lot of times the politicians don't want to tell you that.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
All right. Are you still against rebuilding the World Trade Center?
I'm not against rebuilding.
All right, so they go on to talk about it. The entire clip is about 6 minutes, but I just wanted to play that little snippet. Now, obviously, on the one hand, he isn't wildly in favor for it in that piece of audio, right? He's just kind of like, yeah, I guess so. So he doesn't necessarily think it was the best idea, but that's certainly not the same thing as vociferously opposing the Iraq war and saying this is a terrible idea and you're going to be sorry you did this. Yeah, I guess so is not the same thing as I absolutely oppose this. Anderson Cooper on CNN asked Trump about this. This was I think this was earlier tonight on CNN. So I haven't pre-listened to this. Let's hear Trump's explanation to Anderson Cooper.
Thanks very much for being here. Again, continuing on. I literally was just handed this. There's a report now out tonight on BuzzFeed that I have not heard it. It includes an audio clip of appears to be you on Howard Stern talking on the radio on September 11th, 2002. He asked you, are you for invading Iraq? You said, yeah, I guess so. I wish the first time it was done correctly. Is that accurate? Do you remember saying that?
No, but I mean, I could have said that. Nobody asked me. I wasn't a politician. It was probably the first time anybody asked me that question. But by the time the war started, that was quite a bit before.
Yeah, this was 2002.
By the time the war started, I was against the war. And there were articles, there are headlines in 2003, 2004 that I was totally against the war. And actually a couple of people in your world, in terms of the pundits, said, there's definite proof in 2003, 2004, Trump was against it.
Well, 2004, there's a Reuters article, which you pointed to a lot, and there were a couple of comments you made, I think, at a Vanity Fair party, and one other comment. Those were, I think, a couple of weeks after the war began.
Which is okay. A lot of people said, it was so early that even if it was a little bit after the war, he was totally against the war. I was very much against it. And that was probably the first time I was ever even asked about the war. Howard, who's a great guy, by the way. A lot of people don't understand that, but he is. Howard.
Great interview.
He's a great interviewer. He's a very talented guy and a good guy. But that was probably the first time. I don't remember that, but it was probably the first time I was asked about it.
Okay. Again, I haven't heard of it, but you may have said
sector, yeah, I may have. When you're in the private sector, you get asked things, and you're not a politician. And probably the first time I was asked, by the time the war started, I was against it. And shortly thereafter, I was really against it.
I want you to meet another voter, Ryan Parsons.
Hi, Ryan.
Thanks very much for being here.
Okay. It's not, he explains himself well in that it is possible that he felt that way at that moment. I want to be fair to him. It's possible that he had felt that way about that moment, an unguarded moment when talking to Howard Stern, because it's not like they spent much time on that. Howard just kind of threw that question out there, and Trump answered it, and they moved on. But let's look again. I want to look at Trump's exact verbiage here. when asked. He said, I could have said that. Nobody asked me that. I wasn't a politician. It was probably the first time anyone has asked me that question. When you're in the private sector, you get asked things, and you're not a politician. And probably the first time I was asked. By the time the war started, I was against it, and shortly thereafter, I was really against it. Not necessarily, I mean, maybe, I don't want to, I don't want to say it's not possible that that during the lead up to the war, between the time that he was asked that question by Howard Stern and the time we actually got to invading Iraq, it certainly is possible that his position had changed and evolved. So I don't know if this is quite the gotcha moment that some people are making it out to be. And he went on to say, well, I did it in 2003. I said before that, don't forget, I wasn't a politician, so people didn't write everything I said. Trump said to Meet the Press host Chuck Todd. He said, I was a business person. I was, as they say, a world-class business person. I built a great company. I employed thousands of people, so I'm not a politician. But if you look at 2003, there are articles. If you look at 2004, there are articles. In fact, I saw somebody commenting on it last night that Trump really was against the war, unquote. In September, asked about his Iraq war opposition, Trump said this, quote, you can check it out. Check out. I'll give you 25 different stories. Okay, well, I don't know, but it's not probably not something worth dwelling on. And again, I like what he said at the debate, but when he says it, but it does seem a little disingenuous when he says, well, I was against the Iraq war from the very beginning. Well, not from the very beginning, clearly. And I think he sort of acknowledged that. So I don't know. I mean, the media is kind of making this out like, this is a gotcha moment. Because we have audio of him saying that he was in favor of the war, but that isn't exactly true. Now, there's something else about Trump. Do we move on? All right. You know what? We'll save the Pope stuff for after the break because Trump, I have something from rightwingwatch.org, and you know how much I love that website if you're a regular listener. There are these conspiracy theories abounding about Justice Scalia's death. Some people just can't seem to figure out how he possibly could have died. No autopsy and whatnot. And it is perhaps odd that there's no autopsy, but he was a 79-year-old man, and from the looks of him, not in the best of physical condition. He was 79 and he was a big dude. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that his heart just gave out and he died in his sleep. But there are these conspiracy theories, and one of the people who is on the conspiracy theory bandwagon, sort of a little bit, is the Republican presumptive nominee, Donald Trump, who does like to dabble a little bit in the conspiracy theory stuff. He was king of the birthers for a long time, even though now he doesn't want to talk about it. But I have some audio here, and this is from... he was talking with Michael Savage, who also dabbles a little bit, just a little bit. Let's listen to this. I haven't pre-listened to this, but it's about a minute long. Let's hear Michael Savage and Donald Trump talking about the potential murder of Justice Antonin Scalia.
Donald, I need to come back to the topic we've been all screaming about here, which is Scalia. Was he murdered? I know it's pretty brutal to say that. And I'm not wanting to drag you into this, but this is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I went on the air and said we need the equivalent of a Warren Commission. We need an immediate autopsy before the body is disposed of. What do you think of that?
Well, I just heard today, and just a little while ago, actually. I just landed, and I'm hearing it's a big topic, that the question, and it's a horrible topic, but they say they found a pillow on his face, which is a pretty unusual place to find a pillow. I can't tell you I can't give you an answer. Usually I like to give you answers, but I literally just heard it a little while ago. It's just starting to come out now, as you know, Michael.
All right. Well, I've been covering it for an hour and a half. There's a lot more to it than that. There was no medical examiner present. There was no one who declared the death. It was there. It was done by telephone from a U.S. Marshal appointed by Obama himself. So let me not try to drag you into something you haven't studied, because I don't think it would be fair to you and to the audience. I think after you look into these facts, Donald, you yourself will have to come to some different conclusions than you may think.
So there it is. If he was murdered, this thing about the pillow on the face, I find it difficult to believe that someone would murder him by smothering him with a pillow and then leave the murder weapon on his head. I find it hard to believe. Now, maybe I just, I've never personally seriously contemplated murdering someone, so maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe people really are that careless. I don't know. But, of course, there's this. This is a conspiracy theory that's rapidly growing and will continue to foment. And, they'll be talking about this for years, I'm sure. Obama had Scalia murdered and whatnot. Or maybe the Clintons had him murdered, which actually, again, if you believe in conspiracy theories on that level, that would actually make more sense, because the Clintons have allegedly murdered quite a number of people over the years. They have quite a bit of blood on their hands. So I don't know. As you can tell by my flippant attitude about it, I'm having a little trouble taking it too seriously, but truth often is stranger than fiction, isn't it? All right, we got to take a break, and I promise when we come back, we'll discuss Pope versus Trump. It's a battle for the soul of America or something. People like to use that phrase. It's the battle for the soul of something. So, seemed appropriate. We'll be right back. More Unleashed coming up.
The Real Conscious Connection. Ohm Times Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Ohm Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Ohm Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of the Inspired Parenting radio show, where every week we bring you empowering information from the diverse fields of conscious parenting, education, neuroscience, consciousness, health, and metaphysics to support you in nurturing the best in your children. So if you're interested in understanding what shapes your children's minds, spirits, and hearts, join me every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and prepare to be inspired.
Matt Connarton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connarton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connarton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on Ohm Times Radio.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live. Of course, we are 5 nights a week at 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1. And Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we are also on OTR FM, the premium channel on the Ohm Times Radio Network. Actually, we were the first broadcast on the new OTR FM. So I'm very proud and honored to have been chosen for that. And I don't know. I think we're the first. I think we're still... Well, I know we're the first. I think we're still the only primarily political show on the Ohm Times radio network. So, but I know they're always adding more programming, but so I could be wrong about that. But last I knew, let's see. Speaking of, we'll get to Trump and the Pope in a moment, but there is something on here too that I just saw pop up on Politico. It says here Scalia's son rejects conspiracy theories about father's death. This went up this afternoon. It says here the son of the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia is rejecting conspiracy theories that his father died of anything other than natural causes. Eugene Scalia said on the Laura Ingraham show on Wednesday, quote, "Our family just has no doubt that he was taken from us by natural causes. We accept that. We're praying for him. We ask others to accept that and pray for him," unquote. The younger Scalia's comments come after the justice's unexpected death on Saturday, and local authorities' decision not to conduct an autopsy spurred conspiracy theories that something other than a heart attack may have claimed his life. Donald Trump fueled those rumors on Tuesday when he said he thought the location of a pillow on Scalia's bed was suspicious. And I played the audio for you before the break. But just to remind you, he said, quote, "They say they found a pillow on his face," which is a pretty unusual place to find a pillow, unquote. The owner of the Texas ranch where Scalia was staying later told CNN that the pillow was not, in fact, found on the justice's face. John Poindexter, owner of the Cibolo Creek Ranch, said, quote, "He had a pillow over his head, not over his face, as some have been saying. The pillow was against the headboard and over his head when he was discovered. He looked like someone who had had a restful night's sleep. There was no evidence of anything else," unquote. So, like I said, he was 79 years old. And he was a big guy, so it makes sense that his heart just gave out. I could understand some murder conspiracy theorism if there was something about his dying that didn't quite add up. But a 79-year-old fat guy is probably lucky to have made it to 79. I think the average life expectancy for males in America is around that. And of course, if you're in good physical condition and nothing terminal, no terminal illness or anything comes along to take you down, a lot of people live a lot longer than 79. But if you're not in great physical condition, I mean, not to pick on him, I'm not trying to pick on the guy. He's passed away, and that's sad and everything. But I mean, he's a big fat guy. So there's nothing shocking about his death. To be very blunt about it. Let's see. All right. Trump versus the Pope. Now, Pope Francis, well, let me take this from the HuffPost article. So I want to make sure I get the quotes right. It says here that Pope Francis on Donald Trump said this man is not a Christian. So here's what the article says. Pope Francis said on Thursday the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's plan to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border is not Christian. Speaking aboard his papal plane after visiting Mexico, the Pope was asked specifically about Trump's proposal. He said, quote, "A person who only thinks about building walls, wherever they may be, not building bridges is not Christian," unquote. The Pope stressed that he was not suggesting whom American voters should support in the election. Quote, "I am not going to get involved in that. I would only say that this man is not Christian if he has said things like that," unquote. Francis, a native of Argentina, has prioritized ministering to the poor and vulnerable during his papacy. Trump responded to the Pope's comments quickly, putting out a campaign statement that, quote, "For a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful," unquote. By the way, just a side note, I would think that if anyone would be qualified to make a judgment about someone's faith, it would be, a religious leader like, the Pope. Trump also accused Mexico of using the Pope as a pawn, saying at a press conference that Mexican leaders should be ashamed of themselves. Yet even as he decried the Pope's comments, the billionaire real estate mogul conveniently forgot that he has questioned the Christianity of his Republican rival, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Well, Trump's not a religious leader. Apparently, if it's only bad for religious leaders to do that, then the GOP frontrunner is not the only Republican candidate who has called for a wall to be built between the U.S. and Mexico. Cruz, along with Ohio Governor John Kasich, former neurosurgeon Ben Carson, and Senator Marco Rubio have all said they would build a barrier along the U.S. southern border. A son of immigrants himself, the Pope noted earlier that the U.S. was largely built by immigrant families. As word of the pontiff's comments about Trump spread on social media, Trump's social media director, Dan Scavino, posted this tweet. And with the tweet, there's an aerial photo of Vatican City. And it says, amazing comments from the Pope, considering Vatican City is 100% surrounded by massive walls. That's a good point. A spokesman for Carson also came to Trump's defense on Thursday, telling NBC News that, quote, making sure our border is secure does not negate him from being a Christian, unquote. Rubio told reporters that, quote, Vatican City controls who comes in, when they come in, and how they come in as a city-state. And the U.S. has the right to do that as well, unquote. Despite his strongly worded response to the pontiff, Trump has praised him in the past. He once tweeted, the new pope is a humble man, very much like me, which possibly explains why I like him so much. During an appearance on SiriusXM's Breitbart News Daily earlier on Thursday, Trump said, quote, I respect the Pope and I love the Pope in many ways. I love what he stands for and I like his attitude, unquote. And then there's an update here from 10:25 p.m. During a CNN town hall, Trump suggested the Pope's comments had been misinterpreted by the media. This is an interesting development. Trump said, quote, I don't like fighting with the Pope. I think he has something much softer than was originally reported by the media. Well, I think he said something much softer than was originally reported. I think that he heard one side of the story, which is probably by the Mexican government, unquote. Trump added that he likes the Pope and would welcome the opportunity to meet with him. Quote, I think he's got a lot of personality. He's very different. And I think he's doing a very good job. I think he was very much misinterpreted. I also think he was given false information, unquote. That is, wow, a bit of humility there in this update from Trump. I'm surprised by that. But I mean, it makes, see, I'm actually surprised too, though, that he would change his tone and tenor on this, because I think Trump fighting with the Pope is actually better for Trump in terms of winning the Republican nomination. Republicans have reviled this Pope ever since he became Pope. And, well, the first major thing was when the Pope had the temerity to suggest that part of being a Christian should mean actually, you know, giving a crap about poor people. And immediately Republicans everywhere went wild and said, oh, this new Pope is a socialist. And, you know, it's because he's, you know, it's those, he's got those European values. He's a socialist Pope, you know, and literally just because he said, you know, we should care about poor people. But apparently actually suggesting that human beings should give a crap about each other was just too much for conservative evangelical Christians to bear. They just couldn't believe it. What kind of a man of God would suggest that people should actually, you know, care for each other? That's ridiculous. But, I mean, as I often say, so many of these people practice what I call ironic Christianity, which is my term for most of what modern Christianity has devolved into, where, you know, these people call themselves Christians and go through the motions of Christianity while trying to have as little to do as possible with anything Christ actually said. Because I think what the Pope said, suggesting that we should actually care about poor people, would be very much in line with what Christ said in the Bible. But no, Republicans want nothing to do with that. I understand why poor people don't vote Republican. So really, why should they care about them, right? So ever since the Pope suggested that we should actually care about poor people, Republicans have been very suspicious of him and critical of him at every turn ever since. Republicans don't like this Pope. So I think that Trump, while I like the humility that he showed in that town hall that aired on CNN with Anderson Cooper, I think it's probably, in terms of a political calculus, the wrong move. I think he should continue to try to fight with the Pope, because I think that'll help him in South Carolina, because I'm sure South Carolina is probably full of Christian Republicans who hate this Pope as much as anybody, evangelical Christians, non-Catholics, who don't want to hear about caring about people who are less fortunate, because that's not their thing. Rich people like Trump, by their nature, you see, here's the thing. Okay, so Christians talk about taking the Bible literally, but we all know they really only take literally whatever is convenient for them. One of the things I remember, I was raised Catholic, it says in the Bible, forgive me if I get this not quite right, but there's something in there about it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter heaven. In other words, don't be a greedy, gluttonous douchebag, and you got a better shot of getting in when you die into the afterlife and be with God and everything, if you actually use your good fortune to help others instead of just keeping it all for yourself and being super rich. But of course, if you point that out, you're then accused as propagating class warfare. Oh, you hate rich people, you hate success. Well, actually, it says in the Bible that you're supposed to give away your money and help others who don't have as much, right? That's in the Bible. That's in the book that these people pretend to believe every word of and take literally, even though they don't. All right, we'll be right back. More Unleashed coming up.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at Om Times Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. Om Times Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed as we cruise into our final segment tonight. Don't forget, you can watch, we shared it out on Facebook on the Matt Connarton Hypnotherapist page, my appearance on Late Night with Lynette. Lynette Peterson. She's a former New Hampshire state legislator, and she interviewed me about doing hypnosis and hypnotherapy to help people quit smoking and all that kind of stuff, all that good stuff. You can watch that. That is up on YouTube. And like I said, we did share it out on Facebook. Also, too, both this week's Ward 13 with John Hopwood and then Matt Connarton Unleashed Television Edition are up. You can see John Hopwood and I talking with former ambassador to Belize. He's now works as an immigration attorney right here in Manchester, New Hampshire, where we broadcast from, George Bruno. That was a very, very interesting conversation. All 2 hours of it. We started it on John's show and then continued it on my show. So those are up as well. You can find those on our YouTube. If you go to IPMNation.com, you might be there right now. Click the YouTube link in the upper right, and it will take you there. So you can check those out too. So lots of good stuff. Dr. Kevin will be joining me next week on the television edition of Unleashed. He's going to give me a live reading on the air, a psychic reading, and then I'm going to hypnotize him. So that'll be an interesting show. That'll be a bit of a departure from what we usually do on Unleashed. And before the break, I was talking about, I thought it might be smarter for Trump to kind of stick with his attack on the Pope. There is something on Politico. It says here, Trump's Pope attack could help him in South Carolina. Voters in heavily evangelical state are unlikely to be swayed by the pontiff, Christian leaders say. This one up tonight says here, of course, this was published before his town hall event on CNN, where he told Anderson Cooper that maybe the Pope had been misinterpreted, misquoted, etc. But again, nice to see that little bit of humility out of Trump, but it surprised me as well, particularly just in terms of political strategy. But it says here, Donald Trump has emerged only stronger in his battles with everyone from Megyn Kelly to George W. Bush. His Thursday clash with Pope Francis, at least in South Carolina, looks to be no different. Christian leaders say voters in heavily evangelical South Carolina are at a minimum unlikely to be swayed by the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, who on Thursday questioned whether Trump is a Christian. Nor are they likely to be bothered by Trump's blazing hot rebuttal in which he called the Pope's remarks disgraceful. In fact, they say the pontiff's comments may spur voters to rally around Trump. Quote, unless the Pope knows Donald Trump and knows what his personal beliefs are, then the Pope wouldn't have any idea whether he's a Christian or not, unquote, said David Lane, an influential evangelical leader who works closely with Republican presidential candidates. Quote, it makes the Pope look foolish from my standpoint. This may actually help Trump, unquote. 65% of Republican voters in South Carolina's 2012 primary identified as evangelical. And Orrin Smith, head of the Evangelical Palmetto Family Council, said that Pope Francis's remarks could cause some of those voters to circle the wagons around Trump, the current poll leader, here ahead of South Carolina's primary on Saturday. Many evangelicals believe the issue of a person's Christian faith is known only by that individual and bristle at anyone else, including the Pope, judging otherwise. Right. People tend to be pretty hypocritical there, I think. Earlier Thursday, the Pope suggested that Trump is not a Christian because he supports building walls wherever they may be, a comment that came in response to a question about Trump's vocal support for building a wall on the U.S. border with Mexico. Trump fired back that the Pope was acting as a pawn and argued, quote, for a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful, unquote. Some evangelicals think he has a point. Lane said, quote, building a wall on the border has zero to do with whether he's a Christian, unquote. And Pastor Mike Gonzalez, who is heading evangelical outreach in the state for Ted Cruz, Trump's top rival, said, quote, of course, you can be a Christian and support a border wall. I don't think Donald Trump's Christianity should be based on that at all, unquote. There's more to this article, but let me comment here. So, these people, they're missing the point, and they probably know they're missing the point. They're probably, intentionally pretending, as people so often do in these matters, pretend not to get it when they really do get it, but they're being duplicitous. The point that I believe, not to speak for the Pope, but I think the point that the Pope was making is it's not that it's it's not the wall itself. It's not putting up a border wall that is so non-Christian. It is the lack of care and compassion for the people who are trying to come here, who are trying to survive, who are trying to feed their families. Look, you can talk all day about our sovereignty, about the rule of law, about how we have the right to protect and enforce our borders all you want to, and that's fine. But looking at it from what I would understand to be a purely Christian perspective, where, again, in theory, Christianity, the religion named after that guy Christ, who seemed to be really interested in this idea that human beings should actually care about each other, if you approach it clearly from that perspective, you have to care about the people who are coming here to try to build a better life, try to escape poverty, try to escape the drug cartels that have taken over in many communities in Mexico, trying to support their families. And to just say, we're going to put up a wall to keep them out, I can see how the Pope might argue that is non-Christian. Now, by the way, some of the rebuttals about, Vatican City is surrounded by walls and whatnot, very, very good point. And I call myself a recovering Catholic, and I'm not trying to take up for the Pope here either. There are a lot of things about the Catholic Church that I think are infuriating and hypocritical, and in some cases just plain evil. I certainly don't think priests molesting altar boys is okay, nor do I think that having an entire organization that sort of protects and makes sure that none of these people are prosecuted, but rather just transfers them around, moves them around so they can escape any sort of punishment legally, that is not okay either. I mean, that's just plain evil. So, I think the Catholic Church, quite frankly, is in many ways a criminal enterprise. I've read books and seen documentaries about, some questions about the Vatican Bank and some impropriety there and whatnot. So, I don't want to be misunderstood here. I'm not taking up for the Pope. I'm not taking up for Catholicism in any way. I'm just saying I understand where the Pope is coming from, and this Pope has said some things that I think have some truth to them that are very inconvenient for people who call themselves Christians, inconvenient for them to hear. And this is one of them. I think most evangelical right-wing conservative Christians, honestly, I mean, when you look at immigration and you look at some of the language that the right uses, the round them up and send them home crowd, there's a reason why they refer to them as illegal aliens. I call them undocumented immigrants. They call them illegal aliens. There are no accidents in language in terms of politics and ideology and the psychology of why certain words are used. By constantly referring to them as illegal aliens, what does that do? It reinforces, really kind of subconsciously, this idea that they're not really people. You don't have to care about them. You don't have to have any compassion or empathy for them because they're not people. They're aliens. There's a reason that word is used in that way. They're illegal aliens. They're not people. They're not immigrants. They're aliens. Or, Jay Severin, conservative talk show host out of Boston. I don't know if he's still on the air, but I used to listen to him occasionally. And he would say this thing about them that I'm sure he thinks is just so clever. He would refer to them as crimalians, which is short for criminal aliens. Again, they're aliens because they're not really human. And they're criminals because, of course, they just come here to commit crime, right? Oh, because they commit a crime when they enter the country illegally. So they're criminals right off the bat, even though entering the country illegally is not a crime. But yeah, so he would call them chromalians. So they speak in this dehumanizing language, and it is intentional, and they know exactly what they're doing. And Christian right-wing conservatives, evangelicals, they love that kind of stuff. They love that kind of talking about these criminal aliens. And and they do it, and they're able to do it because in their minds, at least on a subconscious level, it's okay to not care about them because they're not really people. They're aliens. We're almost out of time, but I'll try to get a little more of this article. The fissures between American evangelicals and Catholics run deep, though the gaps between them have narrowed significantly since the 1980s, when Pope John Paul II worked with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher against the Soviet Union. Since then, conservative Catholics and evangelicals have often found common political ground, particularly on social issues such as abortion and religious freedom. But that doesn't mean that Pope Francis's political pronouncements hold much sway with the conservative evangelicals who will be voting here on Saturday, particularly given that many, even those who respect him, consider him a liberal. Yes, of course, and that's what they've said from the beginning. The very first time this Pope actually had the temerity to suggest that, we should, instead of just demonizing them and calling them lazy and spitting on them, that we should actually care about people who are poor. Oh, my God. Oh, he's a liberal. He thinks you should care about people. Tony Perkins, the influential head of an evangelical family research council, which I argue is a hate group, said, "This Pope is left-leaning, and most evangelicals are right-leaning. They don't have a huge amount of allegiance to this Pope." All right, we are out of time. Literally in 10 seconds, this show goes off the air. So I got to go. Thank you all for joining me tonight, and I will be back tomorrow night on IP.